Hi, my name is Bill Hammett. The following presentation is designed for insurance professionals who wish to know a little more about MEC plans, as well as to also clarify the many myths and misconceptions surrounding MEC and other Affordable Care Act compliance vehicles. Here is an index to help navigate the various slides included in this presentation. It has been my experience over many years of working in the MEC and limited med marketplace that insurance agents and brokers have great difficulty in seeing and understanding the complexities within healthcare reform in general and MEC and minimum essential coverage plans specifically. MEC plans are far more varied and contain more options and structures than most insurance professionals realize. In this presentation, I will try and shed some light on some of these often misunderstood variables. The Affordable Care Act, sometimes referred to as ACA or even Obamacare, was originally signed into law by President Obama in 2010. Somehow, ACA has survived all the many legal challenges since then. This is despite being rather poorly written, in my opinion, and containing some significant blunders and loopholes, a few of which I will discuss later in this presentation. The Act itself imposes certain minimum benefit requirements on larger companies, those with greater than 50 full-time or equivalent employees. These companies are also referred to as ALEs, or applicable large employers. What is often misunderstood but true is that employers are not required to offer all of the mandated coverages. The government is on record as being more than happy to let you pay rather than offer. This is what we call the so-called pay or play option. Employers may also choose to partially be compliant by only offering one of the two mandated coverages. Strangely enough, there still seems to be a stigma attached to non-compliance, as most of us still refer to tax assessments as penalties, thus creating the impression that non-complying employers are somehow incurring the wrath of the government by not offering all of the mandated coverages. This slide lists the 4 descriptive terms to describe the various triggers to employer and individual non-compliance. The first is the employer mandate, more commonly referred to as the A option or sledgehammer, owing to the steep assessments imposed for non-compliance. The second is the so-called B option, or minimum value requirement, or even MVP. This requires plans to meet the minimum coverage standards. Third is the affordability standard, which is usually shown as a percentage of the employee's gross monthly income. And lastly is the individual mandate, requiring individuals to have qualified coverage or incur a tax assessment. This requirement is enforced in only a small number of states at the present time. Going forward, let's agree on exactly what employers are looking for when they offer employee benefits. Specifically, what they are looking for when offering benefits to rank and file or hourly service employees. The 4 listed below seem to be the top priorities for most employers. Number 1, all employers need to comply with the Affordable Care Act and avoid penalties. Number 2, most all employees want reduction in turnover and increased employee retention. Number 3, employers want employees to appreciate the value of the benefits that they are providing. And lastly, employers want plans that are easy to explain, administer, and enroll. Forgive me, but this is where we get into the weeds a little bit. But it is necessary to show the following examples to truly understand how the law can work to your client's advantage. First, let's look at the components of the Affordable Care Act. 4980HA, also known as the A penalty or the sledgehammer due to the steep assessment or tax associated with it, is the one element of the law that employers should never ignore. It also contains the loophole I mentioned earlier, that being the ability to simply offer preventive services to be in compliance. The A penalty can easily and affordably be satisfied by offering a MEC or minimum essential coverage plan, usually for under $100 per employee per month. Now 4980HB, also known as the B penalty or MVP, is one of those poorly designed and not well thought out elements of ACA. Simply stated, the assessed tax for noncompliance of the minimum value requirement, or B penalty, failure to provide a plan that meets minimum value standards, is less than noncompliance. Often, we have counseled ignoring the B penalty, and here is the prime reason why. As an example, let's say you have an employee with a chronic or acute health problem. This person really needs major medical coverage. If the B or minimum value plan was part of the benefits being offered, and that employer refused the MVP option, usually because it's very costly to them and the employer, this employee would be denied the option of seeking a subsidized major medical coverage through the state or federal exchange. If they did enroll in the MVP, the net cost to both the employee and the employer would be far greater than if the employer chose not to offer the MVP. Using this same example, if the employer chose to ignore and not offer the minimum value or B option, everybody wins. The employer is happy since it is likely that the net cost of $360 per month in assessment would be far less than the premium cost to offer major medical level coverage. And the affected employee is happy because they are legally allowed now to a subsidized major medical plan on the exchange. One warning though, this entire strategy unravels unless the employer pays most, if not all of the cost for the lower cost MEC or A-level plan. Usually this is $100 per month or less. It is critical that only the most at-risk employees want to leave for the exchange coverage. If the employer passes too much cost along to the employees, the strategy fails and more employees will be tempted to leave and enter the exchanges, triggering an unusually high number of tax assessments. We now know that it is best to offer a MEC to satisfy the A requirement of ACA, but now let's look at the three most common delivery options. Each of these options are quite different, with one significantly better than the others in my opinion. The first option is the TPA plan. TPAs may do a lot of things very well, but sponsoring and supporting a MEC plan is not one of them. Since their motivation is to build administrative fees into the plan, they are usually more costly and therefore not the best option. Aggregators are private entrepreneurs who cobble together elements of a plan from a variety of sources, after which they assign a fictitious identity and then market the plan under this name. Since aggregators tend to outsource most of the services necessary to build a health plan and often change carriers, they have less control over the customer and client services required. Because of this, it is always more difficult to measure the value of these plans. Lastly, we have the insurance company sponsored plans. Carriers mostly own and centrally manage the critical elements of the plan. In most cases, this is the preferred option. We find that as a general rule, this model produces the most satisfied clients and tends to deliver the best value for the dollar, particularly if that carrier has experience and owns all of the critical elements. And as we will see in the next slide, this is critically important in coordinating the plans. The obvious benefits of a single platform delivery model residing on an insurance company chassis are graphically demonstrated by this slide. Note, all the primary administrative and service components are embedded in the base platform, while the more interchangeable plan design and ancillary benefits are shown in the blue boxes. This structure results in consistency, continuity, and better overall client support, as all inquiries are directed to a single source. In addition to better service, the economies of scale in this model are significantly better, resulting in pricing advantages. This is a natural result when the various administrative components of the plan are owned, controlled, and operated by a single entity. You can imagine that this is very difficult for a TPA or aggregator to duplicate. Here is another way to see the single platform MEC delivery concept. In this exhibit, we can see exactly what role each element of the MEC Plus plays and how they complement each other. The MEC, shown in the middle, is always self-funded and regulated not by the state, but by the federal government. Federal regulations under ERISA allow for the loophole that lets MEC trump state requirements for minimum benefits. Technically, the MEC is the only element of the model that by itself complies with ACA. The others, like the wraparound, are accepted by the law and provide necessary supplemental coverage. These wraps can be either self-funded as copay plans or fully insured as indemnity plans. A reminder, even though wraparound plans are allowed, they are not by themselves compliant with ACA. The importance of the supplemental wraparound plans is that they make the plan more appealing to the employees by increasing both their perceived and actual value. Why is this important? Because it discourages otherwise healthy employees from waiving coverage in favor of subsidized exchange options, triggering the smaller B tax assessments and undermining the strategy of ignoring the B or minimum value requirement. Regardless of which delivery system is employed, there are three commonly used plan designs. The first is the limited med category, most often used as the plus component of a MEC Plus plan. I have also referred to them in the past as wraparound plans. These are basically first dollar benefits that provide no cost or low cost access to basic medical services. MEC Plus is shorthand for the most popular design for base plans. This combines first dollar limited med plans with the preventive services offered under the MEC. The third enhanced MEC is the MEC Plus with upgraded coverage that compares favorably with most major medical coverages. The upside of these plans is that they do not include deductibles or coinsurance. The downside is that they have neither out-of-pocket limits. They cover catastrophic conditions but not unlimited. Most often these enhanced MEC plans are used as voluntary buy-up options for employees wanting more substantial coverage. After employer agreement to offer or replace a MEC plan, what comes next is critically important in the negotiations. This is the element of the discussion on employer contribution. Because employer contribution is such an important element in the strategy to ignore the B penalty, it needs to be pointed out that although there is a place for voluntary worksite insurance, MEC plans are not voluntary benefits. There is a difference, as you can see in the slide below. If you are going to ignore the B penalty, as I have advised, it is essential to have the employer contribute all or most of the cost of a single employee rate. This is the best and only way to avoid B penalty issues. If done properly, very few employees will waive the MEC Plus coverage in favor of going to the exchange. The exception being, of course, if that employee or dependent requires major med coverage, but that is okay as that is how the strategy is set up to work. One last note regarding the 100% contribution by the employer. Despite what employers fear, contributing 100% of the cost of the plan does not mean all eligible employees will enroll. In fact, due to Medicaid and other primary coverages, only 60 to 70% of eligible employees will end up enrolling in the MEC plan. In review, here are two plans that you might want to avoid. There are exceptions, of course, and I have personally recommended MVP and MEC-only plans in certain circumstances, but these two are generally not a good option. Example, MEC-only. These are almost always overpriced, with employees disappointed when they discover that nothing more than preventive testing and annual physicals are covered. Some MEC-only plans end up costing over 400% of claims. This is just unacceptable. Minimum value plans are a bad idea for three reasons. Number one, they are more costly to offer than not offer. Number two, they are a huge adverse selection risk, with much of the risk being absorbed by the employer. And lastly, as the law is written, MVPs prohibit medically impacted employees from eligibility to receive a subsidy for state or federal exchange plans. Offering a MEC Plus plan without MVP leaves the door open for that employee or dependent who needs major medical level coverage. As I pointed out earlier, the penalty is significantly less than the cost and hassle of providing the coverage. Bottom line is, let the state assume the risk, not you. Once again, thank you for your time and attention. I hope this has been worthwhile, and I hope some of this clarifies your questions or confusion surrounding MEC or MEC derivative plans. If you are watching this live, I will remain on the line for any questions. If this is a recorded presentation, here is my contact information, and I will be happy to respond to any questions or comments that you may have.